Shana Tova. Good Yontif. Can you hear me okay? Good. I'm Rabbi Dev. I'm a middle-aged, light-skinned person with short, gray, increasingly gray hair. I use they, them pronouns. I'm wearing all white tonight and round glasses. This is such a beautiful sight to behold. And you all are so beautiful, and I'm imagining how beautiful those of you on Zoom and at Kahila are too. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you be strong and healthy. May you live with ease. Some of you may recognize these phrases as part of the Buddhist practice of metta, or loving kindness. And over the summer, I got to sit a 10-day silent meditation retreat that was devoted to the practice of metta. And we focused on repeating these words to ourselves during sitting meditation and during walking meditation and in between for many hours a day, every day. The experience was very powerful for me, and tonight I want to share some of my learning with you. I learned about how love can be an active and mindful practice. I learned that loving kindness can be a practice that shapes who we are even more than it impacts those we love. And I came to see how love can be a key to resistance in these times that we're facing. On the retreat, our teachers instructed us to imagine someone we care about, what they called an easy person, someone it's easy to wish well, someone who brings a kind of uncomplicated joy when you hold their image in your mind, someone it's fun to imagine being safe and happy and strong and easeful. And as I held my people's images and their presence with me, I would repeat the phrases, connecting with my hope for their well-being. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you be strong and healthy. May you live with ease. And these words, these phrases, they help to remind me what love looks like and feels like. Because the word love can feel so abstract. It can mean everything and it can be nothing. And I'm a person who has a habit of saying, I love you, or love you, to my close people every time I talk to them, every time I end a phone call. But what is that love that shows up so often in my speech and in my thought? And working with these metta phrases, it helped me to get closer to understanding and to practicing and to experiencing love as my sincere hope for the well-being of others, for the sake of their happiness. The phrases broke love down for me in a way that I could feel more directly and more specifically. So as I had somebody's image in my mind, I could feel it. I want you to be happy. I want you to be safe. I want you to be strong and healthy. I want you to have ease, not to have to suffer. You want to try it together for a minute? So bring to mind a being that you care for, a being whose happiness brings you joy. Could be a person or a tree or a pet. And as you imagine that being, say to them, may you be happy. And let yourself imagine them happy. May you be safe. See them being safe, feeling safe from internal and external harm. May you be strong and healthy. Behold them in strength, and in whatever good health looks like for them in this moment. May you have ease. Imagine them being free from worry and from stress. Take a moment and notice what it's like to offer these intentions for a beloved being. You may not feel anything in particular. You may feel a little skeptical or curious. You may feel more connected to yourself or to that being. You can try this anytime, anywhere, and just notice what you experience. Repeating this practice over longer periods of time can have a profound impact on us, building our spiritual capacity and our awareness of the interconnectedness of all creation. In metta practice, we gradually expand our circle of well-wishing from easy people to ourselves, to neutral people, and finally to difficult people, people who have troubled or harmed us, and who it may be very hard for us to wish well. At its most profound, this practice can help us to interrupt the cycles of violence that turn victims of harm into perpetrators of the next harm. During my retreat, I would also begin each day by hiking into the hills and davening shacharit, the morning service. And there in the Siddur, in the prayer book, I recognized our Jewish instructions for metta practice, right at the center, in the Shema and its blessings, the prayer we all just prayed together so beautifully. The spine of our Jewish prayer practice is also to be mindful that our very lives are an expression of divine love, and that our most sacred purpose is to love creation back with all our heart and with all our soul and with all our might. In the morning Shema, we begin with the words, Ahava Rabba Ahavtanu, with a great love, you love us. And then we recite the 6 words of the Shema, just as we did a minute ago, and then Ve'ahavta, you must love back. Love God, love the life force, love creation, however you understand it. The Ve'ahavta says these words must be in our heart, and we must teach them to our children. As I practiced day by day, I could feel my heart softening and my spirit opening. I walked on the beautiful trails of the retreat center, and I started to see the trees differently, and the birds, and even the rocks. Sometimes I could feel this growing hope for everyone and everything to be happy, just leaping out to each tree, every bird, every dandelion. This practice was changing me. It was changing my experience of the beings all around me. It was shifting how it felt for me to be me. It was offering me a different and more wonderful way to be alive and to be present in the world and in myself. And as with any practice, the love and the joy would ebb and flow. Sometimes something painful and difficult emerged, and I felt like a big wave was crashing over my head, and I lost my balance, and it took time to find it again. Sometimes I was bored or tired, or I just couldn't connect. But eventually, I came to see those difficult experiences too, as part of a process of love unfurling and becoming stronger. Our High Holy Day liturgy brings us back again and again to a vision of God, a vision of life's source as a fountain of ever-flowing love and compassion. We'll chant these words again in a few minutes. Yud He Vav He, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet. Yud He Vav He, you are compassionate, unconditionally loving, endlessly patient with us, abundantly kind and truthful. Maybe to be aligned with Yud He Vav He, to be fully alive, has to do with being able to touch these qualities of unbounded, unconditional, patient, kind, and truthful love within ourselves. And maybe it has something to do also with being able to notice when we're somewhere else, when we react out of familiar patterns of scarcity or fear, when our bodies and spirits are holding deep memories of not being safe, of not being happy, of not being strong and healthy, of not feeling ease. So many of us are carrying trauma from our own experience and from the experiences of our ancestors. If we don't pay attention, if we don't hone our awareness, the past can fool us into thinking it's all happening again, right here, right now. I remember one time when this happened to me in a very striking way. I was in rabbinical school. I was living in Philadelphia, far from my home and far from my community. And I had to have a pretty simple medical procedure. I drove myself to the hospital, and I registered, and I was shown to a small room with a few lockers, and someone gave me a gown to change into and a plastic bag to put my things in. And they told me to leave the bag in a locker. And as I changed into the gown, my mind was suddenly taken over. The scene felt eerily familiar. Put your things in a bag, leave them here, you'll get them back later. Images of the Shoah flooded in. I was certain that if I left my clothes in that bag, in that locker, in that room, I'd never see them again. I was certain that when I left that changing room, I would walk into a place that was not a hospital at all, but some kind of concentration camp or transport hub or other nightmare that had suddenly replaced the world outside the little changing room. There was a kaleidoscope of feelings and reactions cascading through me in a fraction of a second. And as all of these thoughts ran through my head, some part of me was watching from the outside, and I could see in that instant the magnitude of fear that I have been carrying just beneath the surface. I could see the way the weighty, pervasive presence of the Shoah was alive in me, always just around the corner, waiting to happen again at any minute. By that stage in my life, I had spent a great deal of time thinking about and studying and trying to learn from the Shoah. And intellectually, I knew that I was living in a different place and a different time with a different set of possibilities and dangers and safeties. But I hadn't yet gotten to know the ways that the Shoah was living in my body and the ways that it had taken up residence in me beyond the reach of my intellect. My immediate family left Europe for British Mandate Palestine in the 1930s, early in the 30s, before the Nazi Holocaust. My grandmother's siblings and their families had a much narrower escape, and the traumas of that time shaped my extended family. As a kid, I went to a small shul where many of the people had also barely made it out, or had barely survived not making it out, or had lost great branches from their family trees. When we went to shul, which was mostly during the High Holy Days for my family, I would see the numbers tattooed on the forearms of some of the congregants. And every Yom Kippur morning, Mrs. Rabin, the cantor's wife, would recite the poem Babi Yar about the Nazi massacre of tens of thousands of Jews in a ravine in Kyiv. Mrs. Rabin would weep and tremble as she read, and the kahal would weep along with her. As a child, I didn't understand the weeping and the reverence for lives lost in what seemed to me like ancient history. It was the early 70s, and there was a war raging in Vietnam, and teenagers in my neighborhood were being sent there to kill and to be killed. Vietnamese villages were being wiped out, and forests were being napalmed, and it was all on TV every night. And as a child, I couldn't understand how people could be there to film all of this happening, but they couldn't stop it. I couldn't understand why the people in my shul were so focused on the pain of the past, to the point that they seemed not even to be aware of the present. But now I understand Mrs. Rabin much more clearly. and also the congregants who wept with her every year. When something horrific happens to us or to people we love, in a way that shatters the foundation of our understanding, in a way that makes the ground crumble beneath our feet, and we're free-falling into an abyss of grief and fear and danger, when that happens, we're likely to get stuck right there in that place. And even once the terror's over and we're safe, even if it's months or years or decades or generations later, those shattering moments can feel more real to us than the breath moving through our bodies right here, right now. Now I understand that Mrs. Rabin was frozen in the horrors of the 1940s. And I also understand that a part of me is frozen there too, even though I was born decades later. So many Jews, especially Ashkenazi Jews, are frozen there too. We can see how our people's frozenness in this place of incomprehensible trauma is contributing now to the genocide happening in Gaza. And as I grieve this time, I'm grieving not just the profound losses in Israel-Palestine over the past 2 years, the profound losses, injuries, deaths, destruction in Gaza, but I'm also grieving the debilitating trauma that will be carried by the survivors and by the uncounted generations to come. Rabbi Karen Keter wrote a book called The Bridge to Forgiveness. And in it, she writes that the spiritual opposite of love is not hate. She says the spiritual opposite of love is fear. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, among others, taught us that it's okay, it's important to experience our fear, but it's just as important not to become stuck in it, not to be ruled by it. We need to feel our fear when there's real danger, and we need to release our fear once the danger has passed. The opposite of love isn't hate, but fear. And if that's true, we can turn that around the other way as well, so that the opposite of fear is not security or safety. The opposite of fear is love. And this is very important for us right now, because we're carrying so much fear. If, for example, you're a trans person, a person of color, a disabled person, a person who has experienced abuse, an indigenous person, a Jewish person, a Palestinian person, a queer person, a Muslim person, you're carrying not just the fears of the present, but also the fears of the past, the fears of your ancestors. The opposite of fear is love. It's very important for us to understand this right now, because the currency of authoritarianism is fear. Authoritarian regimes seek to control us through fear. They engineer our fear of the state and of its emissaries, seen and unseen. They arrest the most vulnerable, and they indict the most powerful among us to try to demonstrate that no one is beyond their reach. And maybe, most dangerously, they also engineer or try to engineer our fear of each other. And so one of the most powerful tools we need to resist the tide of authoritarianism is to build up our immunity to fear. And one path for resistance is to cultivate the opposite of fear, to cultivate loving kindness and wishing well for all living beings. This path and practice of love isn't easy or just warm and fuzzy or lacking in rigor. It's not just rainbows and unicorns, though it can be that too, and I love rainbows and unicorns. The path and practice of love is also difficult and disciplined. But this is the path to our deepest freedom. The more we can practice authentic love for others and for ourselves, the stronger and the freer we become. Both Judaism and Buddhism have iconic stories to illustrate what it looks like when this practice of love is put to the most extreme test, and when love is stronger than any force that might be used against us. In Buddhism, there's a story called the simile of the saw, or the parable of the saw. In Judaism, there's a story of the death of Rabbi Akiva, which is told in both the Babylonian and the Palestinian Talmuds. The simile of the saw goes like this. The Buddha said to his disciples, "Monks, even if bandits were to carve you up savagely limb by limb with a two-handled saw, any among you who let their heart become angry, even at that, would not be doing my bidding. Even then, you should train yourselves, saying, 'Our minds will be unaffected and we will say no evil words. We will remain compassionate with a mind of goodwill and with no inner hate. We will keep pervading these people who are assaulting us with an awareness imbued with goodwill, beginning with them. We will keep pervading the all-encompassing world with goodwill, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, free from hostility, free from ill will. That's how you should train yourselves.'" Rabbi Akiva lived under Roman occupation, and he was arrested and sentenced to death for teaching Torah in violation of a Roman decree. The authorities carried out the sentence slowly, in public, torturing him in order to prolong his suffering and to strike terror in the hearts of the people. As his ordeal continued, the time came for reciting the evening Shema, and Rabbi Akiva began to pray. His students pleaded with him to forego the prayer and to hasten his death, to end his suffering. Rabbi Akiva said to them, "All my life I've been praying the Shema, and all my life I've wondered, how will I ever be able to fulfill the verse that says, 'Love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might.' Now I'm finally able to do it. Now, in this moment, I'm finally able to devote my entire soul and all of my strength to loving God." So he continued to pray, and he prolonged his uttering of the last word of the Shema, the word Echad, one, until his soul left his body. These are remarkable stories. They both offer the instruction from a master to their students in how to practice love as an act of devotion and spiritual service, even in the most extreme possible conditions. The heart and soul can be so strong, so powerful, that a person is able to resist the spiritual descent into hatred and ill will, no matter what. Both the Buddha's and Rabbi Akiva's story relate a level of spiritual attainment that few, if any, people will ever reach. But the stories illuminate a path that all of us can follow. It's a path of strengthening our love for life and our desire for all beings to be well. It's a path of practicing not harming or wishing harm for other beings, no matter what they do. It's a path of becoming more and more aware and mindful and freeing ourselves from being ruled by our reactivity. It's a path of strengthening the spiritual muscles that we need to expand the reach of our souls. It's a path of expanding our awareness that we are all connected, all included in the one. And we cannot harm another being without also harming ourselves. It's a path of deepening our spiritual community where we can support each other in our practice, in our healing, and in our growth. We have a hard road ahead, and we don't know what's coming. And there's a lot that we don't have control over. But we do get to choose who we will be and how we will treat each other. May we let our practice on this Yom Kippur help us to choose love over fear again and again and again and again and again and again and again. I'll say one more time. May we and all beings be happy. May we and all beings be safe from inner and outer harm. May we and all beings be strong and healthy. May we and all beings live with ease. Can you hear that song? May it be so.